Previously on the Platinum Games Retrospective, we covered some of the best and one of the most mediocre action games I've ever played. These games were the high-octane and completely bonkers Metal Gear Rising Revengeance and the so-so and boring Anarchy Reigns. We now enter a very interesting era in Platinum Games history. I call this the awkward years for Platinum. From 2013 to 2016, they were primarily working on exclusive Wii U games and the Activision license still. I'm not gonna lie, seeing the lineup of games here slightly scared me. I had faith that Platinum Games can make a great action game out of any property, but when we factor in how little time Activision gives their developers, my hopes were slightly skewed. So will Platinum deliver with their licensed titles? Is the Wonderful 101 a great new Nintendo IP? And is Bayonetta 2 better than Bayonetta 1? All of this and more will be answered in the Platinum Games Retrospective. Well, here goes nothing. The Wonderful 101 is an action beat 'em up exclusive to the Wii U. A little bit of backstory: the game's development began during the lifetime of the Wii. The original idea came from Platinum Games president Tatsuya Minami, who wanted to bring a group of popular or iconic video game characters together in one giant game. Because different gamers would prefer certain characters over others, the idea of being forced to play as a certain character at various points in the game was quickly scrapped. Instead, all of the characters would be on screen at once so the player could choose between them at any time. Platinum Games initially thought of using Nintendo's first-party characters who would work together to get past obstacles, but then the idea was presented to Nintendo. They questioned how the mechanic would fill an entire game. Director Hideki Kamiya also doubted that the conflicting elements of the different Nintendo characters could be successfully put into a consistent formula, like in the series Super Smash Bros. Further brainstorming was put on hold while Kamiya worked on other games, but when progress was halted on that game a year later, work on the Wonderful 101 resumed. Kamiya decided to use a mixture of the Japanese hentai transforming theme with a group of 5 original heroes, and the game's art style went for more of an American comic book vibe. Although the developers had been thinking of making the game for the Wii, when Platinum Games and Nintendo finally used their partnership, it became a Wii U exclusive. The game starts with your main character Wonder Red riding on a school bus when disaster strikes. Soon you push all the kids away, transform into Wonder Red, do your unite hand thing, and eventually meet up with the other Wonders to take down this new alien threat. The writing is definitely a product of the times, with a bunch of internet memes of the 2013 era being thrown at your face constantly, and just a genuine feel of datedness. Unfortunately, it's not the worst thing in the world and it can be overlooked, and if you're a kid you might get a crack at some of these jokes, but a lot of the jokes unfortunately fall a bit flat for me and it boils down to generic stereotypes. Geez, this one hurts. I really love the concept of the Wonderful 101. It has a colorful and for the most part entertaining cast of characters, albeit a bit generic and cliche at times. It has a really good soundtrack, decent level design, and some pretty fun puzzle sections. And that's for the first mission, because after that it becomes really frustrating, annoying, and straight up unfun at some sections. Now if you master the controls and you really understand the ins and outs of the Wonderful One, then that's great. I'm glad you enjoyed the game, and don't let my opinion sway how you feel about the Wonderful 101. However, I really didn't like this game for one major reason. The gameplay is extremely chaotic, and not in a good way. It offers the most basic functions of the hack and slash action games. Your shoulder buttons are used to block and dodge, your regular attack screens done with the A button, and the various weapons you can equip thanks to the Unite Morph mechanic. The weapons provided are pretty fun to toy around with. The Wonder Whip, gun, sword, and hand are all pretty cool for the first time around, and the gameplay offers a pretty satisfying loop at first. You can change weapons by drawing out shapes with either the stylus or the right thumbstick. I personally use the right thumbstick for my Unite Morphs just for convenience, and the game was not kidding around when they said you're going to control 101 wonders. Couple that with 40 plus enemies at times appearing on screen all at once, and a never-ending stream of particle effects, explosions, hit effects, and you get exactly why this game can be hard to follow at times. And that's my biggest issue. Every encounter is way too much for my senses, to the point it becomes extremely overwhelming and often frustrating, because I rarely feel in control of the action. I feel like a bystander as a bunch of crazy stuff goes on my screen. The enemies don't let up either, often throwing every move in the kitchen sink at you, and if you get hit, then boom, all of your wonders get scattered about and the camera angle fluctuates and zooms in and zooms out, and you're forced to chase everyone down, collect your wonders, get right back to fighting. It does remind me of Pikmin in many ways, but unlike Pikmin, which is a slower paced real-time strategy game with chill music and scenery with a couple of tense moments sprinkled throughout, Wonderful 101 is a full-blown action game with non-stop mayhem and explosions everywhere. The game also offers light platforming that always hurts my soul due to the weird isometric camera angles, often being really confusing for me personally when it comes to landing jumps. There's also light gamepad elements where you have to say, look at the code on the TV screen, then input the code on the gamepad, you know, the usual integration during the Wii U era. Sometimes you're controlling a full-on alien spaceship while looking at the gamepad and controlling the ship on the TV and trying to shoot lasers. It can be a bit cumbersome, but it's those moments that make it hard for me to be really mad at this game. All in all, the Wonderful 101 isn't bad, it's just really frustrating and very difficult at points for no reason. If only they let us have control of the zoom levels with the camera and tone down the amount of stuff going on screen at once, it'd be much more fun for me personally. And also throw in some more combos and Wii U gamepad moments. All in all, a very interesting title to say the least, and I really want to see a sequel for the Switch to hopefully smooth out some of the issues I've had with this game, but it just left a little bit more to be desired for me personally. Sorry, Bayonetta 2 is easily in my top 5 character action games of all time. They took all of my complaints with Bayonetta 1 and fixed everything, and on top of that they added new features, weapons, moves, mechanics, and much more to flesh the game out and just make it ultimately better. Sorry for getting ahead of myself and gushing, it's time to dial the hype down a little bit and get analytical. Our story picks up after the events of Bayonetta 1. The holiday season is here, which means Enzo has to gather some gifts for the wife and kids. Bayonetta comes out the cut and starts their usual quips with each other, and Janae pulls up as well. And then boom, angels start attacking again. The fight goes on throughout the city and things get extremely out of hand, especially when Bayonetta loses control of one of her demons, which ends up sending Janae to the depths of hell. Now it's up to Bayonetta to get her friend back and get to the bottom of the recent angelic attacks. The story is extremely fun, it's got a surprising amount of heartfelt moments, the jokes always landed for me, and the characters are extremely likable. I also heavily enjoyed some of the twisted turns presented and the cocky attitude Bayonetta has as per usual. The gameplay is absolutely phenomenal. It's definitely smoother than ever before. Just like in Bayonetta 1, you have a dodge, punch, kick, all the usual stuff from that game. What makes this game more superior than the first is the amazing combat. Everything in Bayonetta 2 is on turbo mode. Combos cancel into basically anything you want. All the new weapons feel extremely satisfying to use compared to the weapons offered in Bayo 1. For example, the Allura whips used mid-combos to launch devastating area of effects attacks that can stun. You can also use these whips to pull enemies closer and combo into with your guns for juggles. Other weapons allow you to completely freeze the angels, which opens the door for a slew of aerial combos. And I mean, sure, some of these weapons are kind of similar to the ones found in Bayonetta 1, but thanks to the game basically being put on turbo mode, they just feel more satisfying to use. Progression is also a huge step up in this game. I never felt like I had to grind for halos to unlock moves or costumes, unlike in Bayonetta 1. Thanks to the abundance of halos you can consume, your moves get unlocked at a rapid rate, which makes you never feel underpowered, which is a good thing in this case, cause it's the sequel. Bayonetta knows how to use her power, so why sugarcoat how strong she is? The costumes are also back in full force considering this game's a Wii U exclusive, and they offer their own unique set of weapons, from the Fox Blasters to Link's Master Sword. There's something here for everyone. I will be honest though, I'm not a fan of all of the designs, mainly the two Daisy and Peach ones. They just look meh to me, but I really enjoy the Star Fox costume and some of the other unlockables scattered throughout. The game just gets everything right. Attacks are 20 times more punchy and combos are infinitely more fun than Bayonetta 1. The enemies are no slouch either. They come all at once and have a wealth of devastating area of effect and range moves to deal with, but they never feel cheap or overbearing like say the claw enemies in Bayonetta 1 or that stupid boat mini boss in Chapter 9. This again is basically thanks to the game speed being boosted, so it's easier to dodge a wealth of the attacks, but trust me, you'll still be getting hit and even dying from time to time. The game is still very difficult during some sections, however I never feel that any of the deaths were the game's fault. They were completely on me for not paying attention or being overzealous with my combos or something of that nature, rather than, again, screen wiping missiles, storms, and Bayo 1. Bayonetta 2 also has really great boss battles. My personal favorite is the Aqua boss, where you go underwater to fight this manta ray with a skull for a face. That being said, the boss fights are a bit too sparse in Bayo 2, and when they do come up, they're great but never quite reach the heights of, say, someone like Jubileus in Bayonetta 1 or anything like that. The level design is also very fleshed out. On top of the typical small puzzles and quick time events that are scattered throughout, there's also extremely good platforming and exploration elements, and that's mainly due to the very locales, the underwater segments, the depths of hell, the on-rails, afterburner sections, the time travel shenanigans. All of it feels a bit more experimental in Bayonetta 2, and that helps into the game's fun factor. To wrap up, the new weapons add a lot of cool combo opportunities, the soundtrack is absolutely jazzy, there's a local and online co-op mode that allows for never-ending horde mode fun of Bayonetta 2 action. Couple that with the Nintendo Switch port and being able to take this game on the go, and yeah, this game overall is, in my opinion, a huge step up from the first. Now we just have to patiently wait for Bayonetta 3. Now comes the hard part of Platinum's career, the creation of the licensed titles Legend of Korra, Transformers Devastation, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant in Manhattan. This was a really hard segment to research for, mainly due to the lack of developer interviews and scarce details on the licensing outsources. Basically, Platinum had full creative control over the titles previously listed, however development time was rather short during the creation of these 3 games. Due to the licensing deal, however, none of these games are available for purchase on any digital store, so the only way you can play them is to either find a physical copy, which some are very scarce, at least in GameStops and local locations, or you could research for them online somewhere, or unfortunately the other option, download the titles off the internet with any means necessary. With that out of the way, let's dive into the first of these 3, The Legend of Korra. So, I don't really know where to start. I mean, this game has to be one of the more hyped up games in the entire Platinum Games retrospective, and I mean that wholeheartedly. This game really had the Legend of Korra show team directly backing the project, even having the animation studio make some of the animated cutscenes for the game. Unfortunately, the game was headed by Activision at the end of the day, so we couldn't quite get the typical Platinum Games quality we truly deserve. The Legend of Korra story-wise makes very little sense. It seems to take place after the events of the first season and follows very loosely the events of the second season, but that's about it. There's no heavy character interactions, barely any cutscenes, it's just very straightforward and extremely short. So yeah, it starts with Korra, Bolin, and Mako doing their typical pro bending gig. They end up losing, and on Korra's way home, she's attacked by some chi blockers and ends up getting her bending bent out of whack. During this time, an evil group attacks Republic City, so it's up to Korra to piece everything together, stop the gang of chi blockers, and most importantly get her bending back. So story-wise, the game is a bit of a mess, but hey, it's Platinum, so the combat's gotta hold up well, right? Well, the game's combat is extremely repetitive and not in a good way. It offers some decent controls, zero light attack, strong attack, parry, block, dodge options, and the ability to cycle between bending, but the reason the combat sucks is because you don't have to do any of that. The game is really easy. It boils down to mashing square and triangle, and if you get bored of that, then mashing the parry button, as timing is extremely lenient, and going into a quick time event state to one-shot literally every single enemy. Speaking of enemies, they don't put up much of a challenge, and that's including both the mini bosses and the regular grunts you encounter throughout the game. The biggest issue is how overpowered you are at all points of the game. The game tries to artificially pad out this said difficulty by making you find your bending, forcing you to complete a bunch of tiny tasks that are spread so thinly between missions and at such a rapid pace, it renders the whole losing bending plot useless. The game makes you beat up jars of water to get your water bending, block or counter 4 attacks for earth bending, etc, etc. It's really dumb and honestly just ends up slowing the game down for no reason. Couple that with the fact you can again basically one-shot every single bad guy in the game, whether it be with the parry, one-hit kills, or stunning an enemy to instantly take them down with the circle button. The list goes on. They try to spice gameplay up with these Nala autorun segments, and they unfortunately also fall flat. Every Nala section was decent in spurts and frustrating at its worst. This whole game is just an underbaked, rushed, and not very good mess. The most frustrating of all the sections was the Nala autorun boss battle, where you have to fight 3 mechs with wonky camera angles, very laggy controls, and basically not having the ability to dodge or block anything. It was utter trash. The Legend of Korra has some cool moments, mainly when you're fully decked out with all your elements and moves unlocked and everything's all maxed out. Then yeah, it's kinda dumb fun to completely annihilate literally every single enemy on screen. And sure, the graphics are pretty good for all things considered, but for the most part, it's just a painfully average game and way too short. It took me 3 hours, bro. I mean, I guess it's kind of a blessing and a curse in this case. It's nice that the game ended early, I didn't have to waste any more of my time on it, but it's also, I have this weird feeling that maybe they could have had more time to flesh things out if they weren't so quick on trying to make this game a $15 budget title or whatever it may be. Anyways, let's move on to the next game. So I'm gonna cut right to the chase. Transformers Devastation is actually really good. Like, I'm in shock with how good it is, especially after the mess that was The Legend of Korra. The game has, yes, say it with me, another generic storyline all things considered, but since it's literally based off a Saturday morning cartoon, I'ma let it slide. The Decepticons and Insecticons team up together to use some Cybertronic device to wipe the Earth clean and rebuild their once great world of Cybertron. With the Autobots arriving on the scene during the attacks, they work together to take down the opposition and save the people of Earth. Just real quick, the graphics and art style in this game are really well done. Yeah, it's the typical cell shading we're all known for in any Toon related game, but it's really well done here. The wind effects blowing from turbines, the way the lights reflect off of the Transformers as they ride around, and the overall cityscapes and levels presented just are extremely visually pleasing. And the fact that it's kind of pandering to the Gen 1 80s cartoon and comic books, it really just feels like an HD upgrade of their past material. The combat is a wonderful blend of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance and the Bayonetta line of games. It has a slow time dodge similar to Witch Time, and the parry mechanic ripped straight out of Metal Gear Rising, despite it being one of the unlockable moves in the game, but hey, details. The weapon system is similar to the sub-weapon usage in Metal Gear Rising, and the gameplay is surprisingly deep enough to feel rewarding. You switch between 4 different Autobots when you come across checkpoints scattered around the map. These Autobots are Sideswipe, Wheeljack, Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and Grimlock. They all have a diverse set of skills and card transformations to help the bots not all feel the same. These Autobots can use ultimate attacks like Sideswipe's Missile Launcher and Grimlock's Dinosaur Rampage mode, and you also have a decent amount of weapons to utilize: axes, twin swords, single hand swords, blasters, grenade launchers, just to name a few. Each of them have their own elemental property to add status effects while you hack and slash your foes. Freeze them, burn them, shock them, all sorts of interesting effects to assist in combat. This, coupled with the other light RPG elements like upgrading weapon damage, synthesizing weapons for better equipment, and going to the garage to increase your character's stats, all make for a pretty satisfying gameplay loop. The combat is pretty standard. You have a light attack, heavy attack, and dodge and block options. The depth comes into play when you're racking up a long combo string to initiate a vehicle attack. From here you ram headfirst into enemies or perform an area of effect to chip off some life off the baddies in the surrounding area. These vehicle attacks can be used to further extend combos with your blaster shots, and needless to say, I really enjoyed the combat in this game. The bosses are also massive and really make your Autobots feel tiny in comparison, so it's all the more satisfying to take these guys down. And the regular melee and ranged enemies, or grunts as I call them, do a good job of keeping you on your toes. They even go the extra step and throw in some Insecticons that offer some variety in combat, albeit the grunts are a little bit on the generic side, but again, for this type of game I'm not too pressed about it. Levels never overstay their welcome, and the design is pretty well done, from the tight cityscapes to the open highways, eventually leading to larger arena style spaceship segments, and even having really fun vehicle chases. Each part of the game has a surprising amount of diversity despite being short and contained. The only gripe I have is the first 2 city levels kind of overstay their welcome, but they act as a tutorial of sorts, so I don't mind them taking up too much time. The game is also pretty short, clocking in around 5 hours give or take, and I definitely would not have minded some padding, maybe with the Reverse Decepticons campaign or something. What also hurts is the game's story ends with the sequel setup we'll never get. Transformers Devastation was pretty good all things considered, and definitely a game that I feel is very slept on. If there's any game I recommend out of these 3, it's definitely this one. I think it's a wonderful entry to people who want to get into the character action genre. And that's a lot more than I could say when we look at our next title. Alright, I'm just gonna be blunt. TMNT Mutants in Manhattan just flat out sucks. I'm not even going to bother going over the story. It's the same exact thing as the last 3 games. Just make the bad guys the Krang in the foot and boom, you're done. For once, I will talk about the writing, as it's just flat out bad here. Non-stop pizza jokes upon every revive, and the turtles literally never shut up. They all come off as extremely annoying dude bros, and their quips never landed for me. I really do not remember the turtles being this annoying in any comic, movie, or show, but I think they might have missed the mark maybe just a tiny bit when it came to making this game. The gameplay is by far the most generic out of all of these games. Gone are the somewhat skill-based parries of Legend of Korra or the actual in-depth mechanics of Transformers, and in comes, I kid you not, hold a single button to dodge and block everything for as long as you want. This makes combat an absolute joke. The enemies go down in literally 2 to 3 hits, making the foot soldiers and all their variations literally fodder, and the boss battles take no skill. The game is one giant mash fest. The worst part is there's not even local co-op, so you can't even share the pain with a friend. And the level design is so bland. You get dumped into a giant hub world, wait around for a red objective to pop up, whether you defuse a bomb, which is literally just holding down a B button quick time event thing, protects the point, or defeat a bunch of foot in the area, rinse and repeat that for 4 or 5 times throughout a mission, you trigger the boss, and boom, you finish the level. You can switch between the turtles on the fly in single player, which is cool I guess, but they all control the same and have very similar special abilities. Oh right, I almost forgot. When you hold RT, you get some sort of special move to throw out which does crazy damage, which is, you know, obviously something you need in a game where you kill literally everything in 1 or 2 hits, which, you know, you're mainly going to be saving up to use on the special final bosses or whatever. There's another tiny aspect of the game which is stealth, and it's basically borderline easy considering all you have to do is sneak up on the AI, and I swear the AI isn't coded in this game, and if you get a stealth hit it literally results in a 1-hit kill, and trust me, you're gonna get a lot of those even if you're directly in front of them because the AI is not finished. This game is just bad, and obviously seeing how the developers seem like they don't care about it, I'm gonna be that guy too and not care about it either. You really feel Platinum rushing to finish this so they can work on any other project, and quite frankly I can't say I blame them, especially with the games that we're going to take a look at that are lined up. So with the licensed games out of the way, it was time for Platinum to move on to their magnum opus, basically Hideki Kamiya's Child, the game that was in development for the Wii and Xbox One. Well, this is awkward. Scalebound was supposed to be the huge game changer, the thing that would put Platinum on the map as a AAA developer in the eyes of everyone. It was going to be a Microsoft exclusive, have an interesting take on the action RPG formula due to the fact that you could control a giant dragon to wreck strongholds with. It had a very clean art style and the gameplay looks like a lot of fun. This however would never come to fruition due to the numerous technical bugs that plagued the development, and well, quite simply, the Xbox hardware wasn't powerful enough for Hideki Kamiya's vision. This wasn't the only cancelled Platinum game either. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, another action RPG made by Platinum, had some issues behind the scenes that ultimately ended up pushing Platinum off the project and having Side Games take full control over the project. Thankfully, this isn't the end of Platinum, as the best game and arguably their most influential was on its way. A collaboration with the creator of the Drakengard franchise and the company Square Enix would finally let Platinum break into the action RPG scene. So I will see you next time as we take a look into one of my personal favorite games of all time, the action RPG Nier Automata.